Welcome to the Substantive Change Update Training for Institutions. Permission is granted to colleges and universities within the jurisdiction of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education to utilize this recording as needed for the purpose of compliance activities. As a reminder, the information provided in this presentation is the property of the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and the reproduction, distribution, or transmission of the presentation in part or in whole is expressly prohibited without prior written consent from the Commission. For permission requests, email the Commission at president@msche.org. Before we begin, we would like to take a moment to recognize the sponsor of today's webinar, WSFS Bank. WSFS Bank, the Delaware Valley's oldest locally managed bank with offices in Wilmington, Philadelphia, Berwyn, and throughout the region, offers banking and wealth management solution for educational, personal, and business customers with investment and credit solutions tailored to the needs of schools and nonprofits. In addition to supporting today's webinar, WSFS Bank will be joining us as a gold sponsor at the 2022 MSCHE Annual Conference this December 7th through the 9th in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Thank you, WSFS. I am Carmela Smith, Vice President for Accreditation Services at the Middle States Commission on Higher Education, and I will share updates on the policies and procedures related to substantive change. The policy was implemented on August 1st, 2022, and is available at the Commission's website at msche.org. This presentation, specifically developed for institutions, will cover the changes to policy and related procedures and provide guidance along with helpful resources and key definitions within the policy. Let's start with what is substantive change and why is it required. Certain types of institutional changes are considered substantive under the United States Department of Education regulations. These changes require Commission review of a substantive change request and action prior to implementation. The changes are not included in the institution's scope of candidate or accreditation status, and failure to comply could impact Title IV financial aid programs. The substantive change policy was designed to address federal regulatory requirements and govern the actions of the Commission, staff, peer evaluators, and member institution. The policy is accompanied by procedures which provide a description of the substantive change process, and the guidelines provide definitions for each of the substantive change types and also includes case scenarios. The substantive change policy, procedures, and guidelines are located on the Commission website under Policies. The MSCHE website has a dedicated section for substantive change that includes deadline dates for submitting substantive change request forms, instructions on how to submit a substantive change request, the substantive change request forms, information on required notifications and prior approvals, information on how to report a lower credential level, peer evaluator forms, and a list of related resources. Periodically, the United States Department of Education will issue guidance or communications on Title IV and federal student aid programs. United States Department of Education released guidance documents in the summer of 2022 on written arrangements. The Commission is developing communication on these letters to help its member institutions understand the new guidance and expectations from the Department. Once finalized, this communication will be posted to our website. You will see some additional questions added to the written arrangement, substantive change request form, related to the calculation of the percentage of the program that would be offered by the third-party provider under question 5C. The Commission has inserted guidance about how to calculate that percentage from the federal regulations. Peer evaluators will be verifying the percentage of the program offered by the third party as part of the review and approval process. The institution must provide documentation that shows that instructors are correctly assigned to the institution or the third-party provider. The form asks for a chart of faculty and staff associated with the program, including a description of their professional credentials, if they are employed by and/or compensated by the member institution or the third-party provider, and the institution's standards for faculty qualifications are listed under 14A through D. A faculty member may not be considered adjunct faculty of the member institution if they are compensated and/or employed by the third-party provider. While not new, the institution must demonstrate that it is meeting disclosure requirements for written arrangement. This is question number 18 in the request form. The verification of the disclosure requirements is highlighted in the Dear Colleague letter, so we point it out as an important item for the institution to provide sufficient documentation. The Commission is required to monitor rapid growth in the number of additional locations. If an institution opens 5 or more additional locations within a fiscal year, and that's July 1st through June 30th, it is defined as rapid growth in the number of additional locations. The Commission will visit the 6th new location that the institution establishes and any new additional locations that are opened subsequently in that fiscal year. If the institution submits more than one additional location at the same time, the Commission will visit 20% of the number of new locations being submitted. You will notice a new question on rapid growth in the request forms that relate to new additional locations. Institutions are asked to track when approaching rapid growth and the number of additional locations and enter the number of new additional locations for the fiscal year in the request form when applicable. The institution must also describe how it will maintain the educational quality while experiencing rapid growth and the number of additional locations. The Commission will have to evaluate the institution's capacity for each new additional location in light of that growth. The Commission staff will monitor the locations that require site visits, ensure that the action directs the visit. And keep in mind that visits are required when you approach the rapid growth. Institutions must provide documentation or a status update on its progress of any required approvals from all necessary licensing, regulatory, or other legal entities. Documentation must also be included when approval is not required. The Department of Education has released guidance documents in the summer of 2022 on institutions seeking approval of a request to change or add accrediting agencies. If the substantive change involves changing the institution's primary accreditor or adding dual accreditation, the Commission must have written documentation that the institution has obtained approval of the United States Department of Education before it will include the change within the scope of the institution's accreditation. Keep in mind that the Commission may rescind the substantive change if the approvals are not received. Institutions are asked to include all required approvals in the request form. You may also include documentation that an application was submitted to an agency and note its status. What's new is that institutions must submit documentation of where approval is not required. In this case, institutions may provide correspondence or a copy of a regulation or statute that states approval is not required from a specific agency. Institutions that are participating in the Title IV student financial aid programs with the United States Department of Education and intend to apply for Title IV must provide documentation to verify that the program or location is certified for the Title IV participation. The Eligibility and Certification Approval Report, ECAR, is a form of that verification. Institutions are asked to verify in the request form if they intend to apply for Title IV funding for the proposed change. If so, include a current ECAR if applicable, and email the updated ECAR to substantivechange@msche.org when it is available. The Commission must have the verification on file, so it will be requested in the action. As I mentioned earlier, resources related to substantive change and other pertinent information and forms are referenced on the Commission's website under the Substantive Change webpage. If you think of any questions after this event, please contact your Vice President Liaison or the Assistant Director for Substantive Change. As we close, we would like again to thank our sponsor, WSFS Bank, for bringing us today's webinar. You can learn more by visiting the WSFS Bank booth in the exhibit hall at the 2022 MSCHE Annual Conference this December 7th through the 9th. Thank you once more for listening to this training.